Everybody, welcome to this virtual meetup. Today we're going to show you how to build applications using the on the TIBCO Cloud, using the Cloud Starter Toolkit. First of all, I want to show you this project is basically a result of TIBCO Labs. And TIBCO Labs is an initiative which we typically do together with customers or partners, and we focus kind of on new technologies. So like AI, IoT, cloud, and stuff like that. So what we will talk about today is how to create your own cloud applications and how to build an app within minutes using the Cloud Starter Toolkit. And we'll basically show you how to get started. So first of all, the TIBCO Cloud. So if you go to TIBCO Cloud or cloud.tibco.com today, you will see all these different tiles, and those different tiles basically represent different capabilities in the TIBCO Cloud. So for example, integration, messaging, analytics. And all of that is basically managed by TIBCO. So you don't have to worry about the security, it scales automatically, and the technology is always up to date. And if you look closer to the screen, you basically see on the right side of the TIBCO Cloud, you see the solutions, cloud solutions. So if you click on there, or for example, go to the risk investigation app, which is a cloud solution built with the Cloud Starter Toolkit. So you could also build a solution like that yourself. And in this application, a risk is identified. And basically you want to take action on top of that risk. You want to do an investigation. And that's exactly what this example does. And it combines analytics with case management. And Jeremy will speak a little bit more in detail about this specific solution later. But first of all, I want to show you how this application was built. It was basically built with the TIBCO Cloud Starter Toolkit. And you see all these different tiles in the TIBCO Cloud. So like I explained to you before, they stand for like integration or analytics or case management. So all sorts of capabilities that you can use. And the Cloud Starter Toolkit allows you to take those different capabilities and compose new solutions out of it. Now, how does the Cloud Starter Toolkit does that? It does it basically with 6 different things, and I'll go over each and every one of them in detail. So the first thing that you will need is the documentation page. On this documentation page, you can find information about the cloud starters. You can find information about the different components. You can find how to basically get up and running, how to get started. Then the next thing that you will find, that you will need, is the command line interface, which is something you can install on your own machine very, very quickly. And this will basically get you up and running. So with the command line interface, you can set up your development environment. You can choose a name for your cloud starter. You can pick a specific template. And you can also test and debug your application and upload it to the cloud. And we'll come to that later. Then the third thing that is within the Cloud Starter Toolkit are all sorts of different NPM packages. So with these NPM packages, the Cloud Starter or your solution can basically talk to the different APIs of the different cloud capabilities. But what these NPM packages also contain is kind of pre-built UI components that you can reuse. For example, to do document management or to chat with each other or to leave comments and stuff like that. Then the next thing that is within this nice packet of the Cloud Starter Toolkit is some sample applications. And those sample applications are published as open code on GitHub. So you can just download them, fork them, and change them. And this specific sample application that you're looking at here is basically a complete custom UI into the case management capability. So everything that you see here on the screen can basically be adjusted and changed, and everything can be reorganized as well. Now, in order to make it easy for you to write this code, we've also created this thing called schematic templates. Now, the Cloud Starter Toolkit is created within the web framework called Angular. And in Angular, you have something called schematics. And schematics is kind of the scaffolding of your code. So what you do with schematics is you basically answer a number of questions, like what is the name of the schematic, where do you want to use it for? And then based on those answers, it creates all the HTML and CSS code needed for your component to run. And then the last thing within the toolkit is basically the deployment. So this is a nice thing. You don't have to worry about where your cloud starter runs and if it runs and if it's up, etc. You can basically, from your design time environment, so you can do this from command line, or you can also do this from a tool like WebStorm, so a nice IDE or Visual Studio Code. You basically run this deployment, and then you see that your cloud starter actually runs in the TIBCO Cloud. And then you can share these applications with others so they can also deploy it in your environment as well. And with that, I want to give it over to Jeremy. He will talk a little bit about the various templates and demos that we've created with the TIBCO Cloud Starter Toolkit so far.
Thanks, Hugo. Yeah, so I'd like to just go through some of the the templates or patterns of applications that we typically create with the toolkit. So just go for the next slide, Hugo. One of the first common kind of patterns for applications we create are around the case management area. So this pattern is really about using the Live Apps capabilities on TIBCO Cloud to create a case management style application. The toolkit will let you basically build your own UI for that application, and then you could use that for managing a whole series of use cases, such as kind of managing partner requests, order management, customer servicing, and many other case management style apps. Next slide, Hugo. Okay, so now the next thing that we have a pattern for, which is really interesting, is to bring in the analytics capabilities of TIBCO Cloud alongside those case management capabilities. And Hugo spoke a little bit about this before in the risk management section. So what we're actually doing here is that we have lots of transactions that are being managed externally, and they're being scored. And what you're really doing in this kind of template is looking at that data in a very visual way using the spot fire capabilities, the analytics capabilities. And then when you spot a fire or you see a problem, you can actually mark that data and then go off and create cases in a case management app to manage those. So this pattern's all about bringing kind of insight to action, being able to bring that insight from analytics and being able to action it with case management capabilities. Next slide, Hugo. So this one is also using the analytics capabilities, but this time it's bringing it together with business rule capabilities of TIBCO Cloud. So a good example here is around decision management. So let's say that you had business rules that you use to set discounts, for example, on products or pricing of products. You've got all those rules running in real time. And what you can actually do with the Cloud Starter app is go in and kind of visualize your past sales or your current situation within analytics and use that information to then go and make updates to those business rules. So for example, if you see that one product is selling a lot, you might need to adjust the discount based on how much stock you have, for example, in real time. Next slide, Hugo. This one is also a very common use case, and it's bringing together the messaging capabilities of TIBCO Cloud with case management. So a good example of this one would be where you're doing customer services, where you might have web chat on your website, and then your agents can actually kind of talk real time with customers and actually be managing their cases on their behalf. Next slide. So to move on from that, I just wanted to highlight a few of the sample business applications and demos that we have available on the toolkit. If you go to the next slide, Hugo. This one's the risk investigation app that you saw briefly. You can actually get this up and running just by logging into TIBCO Cloud and clicking on the Solutions tab, and we can actually deploy that with one click so that you can see the application. This is the use case where transactions are being scored for fraud. And then you can kind of use the analytics tool to identify suspicious transactions and then actually go off and create cases in the case management tool to manage that potential fraud. The really cool thing about these kind of templates is that once you get the idea, you can then go and change the underlying analytics templates, for example, to point at your own data and within minutes bring up an application where you can see your own data and actually manage that data through case management. Next slide. And this one's similar with analytics, but this time it's using the idea of anomaly detection. I think if you press next, Hugo, you'll get a different picture. So what's happening here is that there's actually some equipment, intelligent equipment that's being measured in real time. In this case, it's power plants and oil pumps. And the data that you're seeing on the screen is really kind of the live data from those pumps. There's some AI going on with TIBCO Data Science that runs an algorithm to detect anomalies, and it will highlight when there are problems with these pumps. And the idea very much in this application is that based on that alert happening and you can see a problem occurring, you could then go and identify an engineer and map him out actually a route based on where he is, using the application to get him to the equipment so that he can go and resolve that problem as quickly as possible. Next slide, Hugo. And this one is really about the messaging capabilities with case management. So here we have kind of a typical customer care center for a telco, where the customers are actually talking to the agent on a live chat. And based on that conversation, the agent can manage their case, can talk to them in real time through the chat, but he can also do things like get next best offers or suggested resolutions to the problem that the customer has. Next slide. Okay, so to recap what you've seen in the last 15 minutes or so, and what we've been showing you is, firstly, that you can rapidly create your own business applications that run on TIBCO Cloud. And we try to highlight the fact that using the Cloud Starter Toolkit, we can really kind of enable our customers to build these applications very quickly, because they have a kind of starting point, they have templates to really kind of get up and running with an application as quickly as possible. But the important point here is that these templates and this toolkit is all open code on GitHub and NPM. So that means that you can take this toolkit and you can use it to build your own applications. You can change it where applicable. Next slide, Hugo. Okay, just to finish up, I just point out that we have these meetups all over the world. So be sure to take a look at our meetup page and have a look, see if there's one near you that you can come and join us. Next slide. And we've also just launched our Silicon Valley IoT and blockchain hackathon. So if you're in the Bay Area, be sure to check this out, especially if you're interested in these areas of IoT and blockchain, see what TIBCO Labs are doing with these technologies. There's a link on the screen. And the next slide, Hugo. And finally, if you want any more information or to see some of the demos for Cloud Starters, we have a range of resources. You can contact us on the email address tibcolabs@tibco.com. There's also a part of our website specifically for TIBCO Labs. There's a GitHub area that has all of the TIBCO Labs source in there. There's also a wiki, and within the wiki you'll see lots of links to demos and some of the applications that we've talked about on this webinar. And then finally, don't forget to check out the meetup page so that you can get involved with more of these meetups.